After everything I shared in the first episode, it naturally opened up the next question. If my body is still reacting this way, where did this actually come from? Because it didn't start in one moment. It didn't start with one relationship. It's much deeper than that. When I look back, I can see how these patterns were slowly built through the environments I grew up in, the experiences I had, and the ways I learned to feel safe in this world. So, in this episode, I want to take you back a little into the roots of those patterns and how this whole journey really started for me. When I reflect on where these patterns came from, I see that it didn't start with one event. It started with the system we are all born into. We are born into a world that largely operates through fear-based conditioning. From the beginning, we absorb messages about who we are and what we need to become in order to be accepted, valued, and loved. Through parents, school, authority, and society, we slowly internalize things like that we must perform to be valued, that we must achieve to be worthy, that we must fit in to belong. And one of the deepest beliefs many of us carry is that we are not enough as we are. These things are not always said directly to us, but they are reinforced through comparison, reward, criticism, pressure. And over time, they don't just shape the mind, they shape the nervous system. As a child, I was very observant, quiet, sensitive, empathic. I could feel everything around me. Because of that sensitivity, expressing myself didn't feel safe. So I learned to stay quiet. I observe. I process everything internally. But even then, something inside me felt very clear. I had a strong sense of freedom and equality. Like everyone should be able to exist as they are. And at the same time, I felt something was missing. I wanted to be seen, heard, understood, and loved as I am, not as a role or performance. I didn't force myself to fit in too much, but the environment still shaped me, shaped my nervous system responses. Because even if we resist something consciously, the body still absorbs it. For many years, I continued living within those structures, but something inside me kept asking deeper questions. Who am I beyond all of this? What do I actually want? When I look back, there were 3 major shifts in my life that changed me on every level: environmental, mental, emotional, and eventually spiritual. The first shift happened when I left my small town at 16 after high school and got into the National University of Mongolia in the capital, where half of the country's population lives. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people with strong personalities, big dreams, and a clear sense of who they were. People expressed themselves freely in their own ways, and that fascinated me. I moved through different friend groups, different jobs, and started exploring my own skills and interests. But even then, something still felt unclear. I still didn't really know what I wanted. I was trying to fit into society, trying different paths, but something about it never felt fully right. I still wasn't expressing the deeper parts of myself. People had certain expectations of who I should be, and they didn't really welcome change. I often felt boxed in. The second shift came when I went to study abroad at Renmin University of China. That experience opened another layer in me. For the first time, I truly felt heard. I was surrounded by brilliant young people from many different countries. And because everyone assumed any struggle in expression might simply be a language barrier, people naturally gave each other patience and space. That patience changed something in me. For the first time, I felt what it was like to take my time and still be received. This was also where I had my first long adult relationship. He was kind, dedicated. In many ways, our inner child selves felt like best friends. What I learned most deeply there was emotional expression. At the beginning, I struggled a lot and I cried a lot. But instead of shutting me down, he would simply say, "Take your time. Whenever you're ready, I'm here." That was one of the first moments in my life I felt emotional space being held for me. And maybe that's why, years later, emotional truth became such a huge part of my healing. Then came the third shift. Around the age of 30, I made the biggest decision of all. By then, I had built a stable corporate life. I was getting promoted every year. And interestingly, right at the exact moment I would start losing interest, another challenge or new role would appear and keep me there. That cycle kept me in the corporate 9 to 5 world for around 4 to 5 years. But deep down, it was becoming harder and harder to ignore myself. Every morning felt like I was dragging myself into something my body no longer wanted, almost like torture. The signs became intense. My body resisted, my energy resisted. And I would try to force myself to focus on work, sometimes even isolating myself in meeting rooms just to push through. But then something strange started happening. I began having this almost awake, dreamlike vision. It felt so vivid, almost as if it were really happening. In that moment, I would suddenly see myself standing up, running to the door, rushing down the stairs, going all the way outside, and finally breathing freely. Like my whole body just wanted out. Out of the room, out of the structure, out into life. And it repeated. The feeling was so intense that it almost felt more real than the meeting room itself. That was when I knew these weren't just random thoughts. Life kept showing me repeated signals. And eventually, I listened. I stepped away from everything I had built, the job, the structure, the predictable path. That was the moment I truly chose to discover myself more deeply. And that's when things accelerated. I had already been on a spiritual path before. I knew about meditation, awareness, shadow work, self-reflection. But at this point, my healing became much deeper, more intentional, more intense. It wasn't just something I practiced sometimes. It was 24-hour, 7-day process I had all the time. I was observing my thoughts, my emotions, my patterns constantly, even in my dreams, sometimes lucid, sometimes symbolic. It felt like I was living in 2 layers at once. Oh, and honestly, my body felt it. I needed a lot of rest, a lot of space, strong boundaries. During the time, I was moving from place to place, meeting people, experiencing different environments. And I started noticing something. Every person I met, selectively, every situation I put into, felt like a reflection. The life was showing me something about myself. So whenever emotions came up, fear, sadness, anger, I didn't run. I stayed. I allowed them. I sat with them and I listened. There was one experience that took everything way deeper. I would love to share this one. At that time, I was in a very intense connection with someone. Emotionally, physically, everything felt strong. And for the first time, the emotions that came up in me were so intense that I couldn't just understand them anymore. It was overwhelming. And I was trying to make it work. But the more I tried, the more painful it became. And at some point, I stopped and asked myself, why am I feeling this much pain? Because I already knew what we feel is not only about the other person. Something inside me is hurting. So instead of trying to fix the situation outside, I turned inward. I sat down on my sofa, turned on my camera. This was something I have done for many years. I speak out loud to myself so I can hear what's really inside me. And as I started speaking, I went deeper into kind of trance. And I connected with the part of me that was hurting. I saw her, a little girl, sitting alone in the dark, curled up. And I approached her. I started asking her the questions. What are you feeling? Why does this hurt? And she answered. She said, you're not listening to me. You're ignoring me. You're abandoning me. And that hit me. Because I realized everything I was blaming him for, I was doing to myself. I was silencing my own needs. I was tolerating things that didn't feel right. I was abandoning my own voice. And then she showed me more. Memories from my childhood, the moments where I wanted love, attention, affection, but didn't receive it. The moments where I stopped expressing myself because it didn't feel safe. Where I learned to hide my emotions, where I protected myself by pretending I was okay. And I saw clearly the pain didn't start here. It's been there for a long time. So in that moment, I became the parent. I spoke to her. I told her, I see you. I hear you. I am so sorry. I will never abandon you again. I held her and I hugged myself, crying deeply. And one part of me also felt the shift. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking someone else to give me what I needed. I was giving it to myself. And I also understood something about my parents. They weren't wrong. They loved me in the way they knew how. They had their own wounds, their own limitations. So there was no blame, just understanding. And then the experience went even deeper. It felt like love itself was there, like there was no separation. I was the child, I was the parent, and I was the love. And I was just enough as I am, and more than enough. I was love. That whole process lasted for hours, releasing, crying, holding, integrating. And after that, everything became very clear. A few days later, I knew what I had to do. At that time, he had already pulled away. No contact. But we were still connected through work, so I arranged the call. And I gave him a chance to show up, to speak, to meet me. But nothing really changed. The same patterns were still there: avoidance, distance, control. And I saw it clearly. This is not aligned with me anymore. I spoke. I expressed what I felt, what I saw, and what I could no longer accept. And I ended it. Not because he was wrong, but because I could finally see where I was abandoning myself. I stopped giving him access. I stopped allowing him to treat me the same way. I chose myself fully. It wasn't easy. After that, I cried. My body was shaking and sweating. I was all on the floor. It was intense release. There was still pain. Some part of me wanted it to work out so much. But the decision was clear. And over the next months, I slowly let go. And after that, my life became a deep process of integration. Whenever something came up, fear, sadness, guilt, shame, the heaviness, the tears, I stayed with it. I listened. I held space for it. I worked through it. I was learning how to parent myself in real life. It felt like I was peeling layers after layer until I reached the core. My wounded parts started showing me the past, specific memories and exact moments where it all began. And slowly, I became my own sanctuary. And little by little, as I started freeing myself from those fear-based patterns, my authentic self began to come together. I reconnected deeply with my feminine energy, intuition, sensitivity, emotional depth, flow, that creative life force within me. There was so much love, so overwhelming, almost overflowing. And then I began to integrating my masculine energy, clarity, structure, direction, the grounded presence, my inner protector. The part of me that could hold that love, that could direct it so it lands safely. And that balance created something new. My masculine side gave me safety, so my feminine side could finally express freely, without fear. I wasn't overflowing into others anymore. I could contain myself. I didn't have to abandon myself. I could feel when I was about to overgive, especially when the other person couldn't meet me at the same depth. And I could stop. I could say no and feel safe doing it. No proving, no fixing, no more people pleasing by leaving myself behind. I could just be myself, unapologetically. That was new. That was integration. And then, even after all of that, I noticed something again. Even after the awareness, the healing, the integration, my body was still reacting. The same survival patterns were still there. The same automatic responses, especially in the real life moments where there's no time to think. And that's when I saw it clearly. There was still a gap. Not in my awareness, but in my nervous system. That was the realization. That was the realization. My mind can understand something, but the body still needs to learn it. And that's where the next phase began. Not just awareness, not just healing, but embodiment. Learning how to let the body feel what the mind already knows. And this is where it connects back to the first episode, awareness versus embodiment. That's where I first started noticing my nervous system, noticing my thoughts that are based on fear-based conditioning. So this is what came after. So if you want to understand where that realization began, you can go back and start there. And one thing I want to say here, this whole process, it's not like one moment happens and suddenly everything is fixed. It's not that clean. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3, done. No. All of these things, healing, awareness, regulation, integration, they don't happen separately. They overlap. Sometimes you have a deep realization, but you're still healing something else at the same time. Sometimes you feel very embodied in one moment, and the next moment, an old pattern comes back. And that's okay, because this is not one-time shift. It's a long process. It's built through small moments, daily choices, breathing, pausing, coming back to yourself again and again. That's how it actually lands in the body. That's how it becomes real. It's not a click and shifts everything. No, human body is not capable for doing that. Body needs its time. Okay, thank you for your presence and see you next time.